Welcome to the Morse Code Podcast, where we talk with entrepreneurially minded creatives in music, film, and writing. My name's Corby, and I'm hoping these conversations inspire you to push deeper into your own work, whether you're a full-time professional or just starting out on your own creative odyssey. Tyler Merritt is an actor, musician, comedian, and activist behind the Tyler Merritt Project. He's best known for his hyper-viral video, Before You Call the Cops, which has now been seen by more than 100 million people. He's also a seasoned actor whose credits include Netflix's Outer Banks, the Disney series Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and A24's up-and-coming feature, The Inspection. God, if that's not enough, he's also a published author. His 2021 release, I Take My Coffee Black, is a really great read, actually. I read a lot of it in one sitting. It was actually a bath, so one soaking. Either way, it's funny, provocative, and earnest, a lot like the guy who wrote it. His second book, This Changes Everything, was published just a few days ago, January 14th, 2025. And it's about the moment he found out he had cancer, and then all the moments after that. Much like his first book, the new one's funny, but with a gut punch every fourth paragraph. If you're listening to this, you already know what a lovable and lovably complicated person Tyler Merritt is. Like you, I just love the man. So unsurprisingly, this was the fastest 1-hour conversation I've had in my life. I feel like we could have talked for a lot longer. If you get something out of the Morse Code Podcast, it probably means you're a person interested in creative people and are likely a creative person yourself. This is our 60-something episode, and after talking with authors, comedians, musicians, writers, painters, photographers, I can't help but notice that professional creatives have a lot more in common with one another than they don't. Namely a very simple desire to express themselves, coupled with an almost insane drive to persist. Maybe you're one of them. If you are, then I hope these conversations get you high, make you restless to get back out there and make something of your own. If you do believe in our mission, please give us a 5-star rating and follow us on Instagram. I can't tell you how much it helps and encourages us to keep bringing you these great conversations week after week. And now here's my conversation with Tyler Merritt. Tyler Merritt, my man, thank you so much for making a little time for me.
I do not see a world that we are going to be able to pack in however long this podcast is. It is not long enough, is what I'm trying to say.
I agree.
Because you and I haven't sat down to talk ever, and there's too much to talk about.
I agree. I feel like we have different reasons for thinking that, and I wonder how we're going to iron this out.
But even the fact that we're thinking that both differently tells me this is going to be a problem. This whole podcast is going to be
I was going to say amazing, but yeah. Problematic in advance. Well, I also feel like I have such a tremendous amount of respect for you as, I just want to say first and foremost, a human being. You're just a fucking glowing vessel of humanity. And
thanks,
I'm like the 700,000th person to say that. So you don't have to put it in your book or anything. I wouldn't mind. But I do want to acknowledge that from the outset. And when last night I was rereading I Take My Coffee Black, I was just like delighted. And I also just want to have a moment of personal gratitude from me as a writer to you as a writer, and say that in reading I Take My Coffee Black, I felt like, and I want you to take this the right way, I felt like I too can write. There isn't one way to write. Yeah. We don't have to be Shakespeare. Who's that guy?
Right.
What you have to be is authentically yourself, and you do that effortlessly.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man. And maybe I just want to just jump into this conversation, and I could ask you, because you didn't, at least in the early part of the book that I reread last night, you didn't really get at what made you feel like you could write, at least early on as a child.
Yeah.
Was there a formative experience that I didn't get to, or what? I mean, how did somebody tell you could do it?
No, I'll tell you. First of all, thanks for all that, man. That's super nice. And since we're in the complimenting part of things, I just want to get this out of the way, and I want to make sure. Is this camera? Okay. If I don't even know if this is the camera I should be looking at, Jared,
No,
but I'm
that's
going to
the
look
one,
at
buddy.
this one.
If it's nice, it's this
Yeah.
one. If it's mean, it's that one.
Corby, I want to tell you, I was already a fan of you, and then you released Morse Code. Man, that's good. If you all haven't seen it, that show, it's good. I auditioned for that. He instead cast some really attractive Asian guy in the role that I read. But then the main kid character in one of the scenes is wearing a Miss Saigon t-shirt, okay? Miss Saigon's my favorite musical. I talk about it and I take my coffee black. In Morse Code, the show I auditioned for, I end up watching it and the kid is wearing a Miss Saigon That's like, Corby was trolling me so badly that when I watched it, I texted him and I said, bro, this Miss Saigon t-shirt. And he went, I didn't even notice. So I was about to pour out all of these things about how dope, about how cool he looks and how that's almost a problem. Like, bring it down a little bit. You look too cool. Now you're a dad, and I feel a whole way about that. But I love the man, but I don't trust him. That's what I was trying to say. Let's carry on.
Well, I'm just glad you're here in spite of that profound lack of distrust. And I was hoping to get that wonderfully put jab out of the way as early as possible so we could reestablish a friendship at least somewhere along the way. But okay, back to you, because this is your show.
Yes.
As the writing side of it. Yeah. Did you get good grades in English?
No, I'll tell you what it was, man. I became a fan of hip hop and rap music at a very, very young age. Mm-hmm. And that'll do it for you if you... I think people experience things in very different ways. You understand this being a musician. The way that you listen to music is different than probably even the way, well, I don't know, your wife's super creative.
Definitely different than she does, though, which I love, because she hears completely different.
We experience creativity, creatives experience creativity differently than the rest of the world, and that's what makes us special for what it is that we do. Mm-hmm. And even as a kid, man, I remember as clear as day, there was a rapper called Special Ed. He had a song called Magnificent, and the lyrics went like this. I mean, I was a young kid, and the first lyric to the song goes, I'm the magnificent with a magnificent style, and I can go on and on for like a mile a minute. I remember even as a kid being like, okay, he is structuring words together musically in such a way that I don't understand at this age, but whatever he's doing with words that feels like magic, I think I can do that too. Now, granted, my version came out, my very first rap was, I'm Tyler T, that's who I be, and I'm the MIC, I know you can't beat me. But in my mind, I'm mimicking this thing that to me looks like magic and feels like magic. And I've always felt like I can do that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think all people feel that way when they experience something. You know, there's people that like will watch boxing and they're like, I want to be the next Mike Tyson. I don't think that way. But if I'm listening to something creative or seeing something creative that feels like magic, I first get angry. Like I get 2 minutes of being like, God, that's good. Why didn't I come up with that? And I experience that probably the most in songs and in music. Mm-hmm. And then it goes over into TV or to Broadway or to whatever. And I start to think, God, why did you create that? And I did not. Mm. And I've experienced that ever since I was a kid, man. And so I don't think anybody ever told me you can do this. I just always remember going, if the magic is over here, I want to be a part of that. Mm-hmm.
I can totally relate to that. I've been attracted to people's talent. And I wanted to be around it since I was a little kid. It's like a defining force of my life. I moved to Nashville from my podunk town in Idaho for that reason, because I'm just like, where is it? Where is it at? Is it over here? Is it over here? Hey, Jared, can we move Tyler's mic up just a little closer to him? Thank you. But another thing that you said that I wanted to ask you about, when you were talking about when somebody does something magical and you want to... I might be misparaphrasing you, misquoting you. Sure. I want to be part of that. I want to be able to do that too. Was that part of? Am I getting at it right? What you just said, because that is important for what I'm about to say.
Yeah, I don't even know if it was. I want to be able to do that too. So much as it was, I think I can do that. or maybe even better. Whether that was true or not, you know what I mean? Like when I saw something that felt like magic, that was entertaining, I just felt like I can do that. So I'm going to try to do that in the Tyler version of it to the best of my ability. And then, of course, as you get older, you start to realize if you choose to be an entertainer, whether we like it or not, in certain categories, we're competing against each other, you know? And I don't mean that competing like in a bad way, but on every level, there's just a little bit of competition, meaning in acting, definitely. I remember the very first time that I played a show here in Nashville. How long have you lived here now?
20 years.
Okay. Gosh.
I could have been at the show. I don't know.
Well, the first place we played was 12th and Porter, and they used to do this thing called 12 on 12th. And there was a band that was before us that was really popular in the town, and we had never played before. And I remember sitting back with my band, Broken Frame at the time, being like, we're going to kick these guys' ass. Right? Like we're like, that was the mentality. This wasn't a competition. You know what I mean? Like nobody was supposed to compete, but there's always just been this certain level of like, I see the magic. I think I can do that. And I just want to do it well. And let me be clear. It was never like, I want to be better than anybody, but there's always this, even in an audition for TV, you know, we get sent scripts or whatever, and you read for those things, and in the back of your mind, you are thinking, I need to be the best at this thing.
Yeah, in acting particularly, there's first place and everything else.
Man.
There's no second place. Unless the first place guy gets whacked or sick.
Can we talk for just a minute about how second place sucks in acting?
It's worse than any other place.
Right. And we can cuss on this podcast. I noticed you did.
Feel free.
So I have a friend named Steve who lives in Atlanta, and whenever we get an Avell check, I just text him and say, fucking Avell. Okay.
Yeah.
Like this means nothing.
Yeah.
This means
don't send me the Avell check. I told you I was available.
I told you I was free.
I haven't changed my mind. Totally. Like they're like, you're closer. You're really close.
We just want to acknowledge that you exist. we saw your tape, right? And then you get a pin, right?
Yeah.
Still,
even
second
worse
place.
in some ways.
It's second place.
Yeah. You're even closer.
Well, you're even closer, but you're nothing. You know, this is the industry that we're in. You start out as a kid just wanting to be a part of the magic, and then you realize that you're competing in this.
You
magic.
are, unless you are in the business of being your absolute self and somehow establishing your own category and your own lane, in which I feel like I'm just going to humbly put myself in your lane a little bit, because that is what I have been trying to do for 20 years, really. As I moved to Nashville, and, you know, for a singer-songwriter, I had some wheels, you know, I could get around there a little bit, and then you go to Nashville and you're like, oh, wow, I'm just nothing. And everybody in Nashville does everything better than you. You know, a better singer, a better songwriter, the guy who's got 20 cuts or the guy who's got 50 cuts, and the guy, like, and I realized, okay, I can't do any one of those things better than anyone else. What can I do that's just absolutely me, that nobody can compete with, because there's no, so I think I've had some success in that field, but also, and I could talk about this for way more than I want to. When you create your own lane, when you don't plug yourself into a pre-existing slot, you really have to create your own audience.
100%.
And you have done that like better than almost anybody I know.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, you are very respectfully put, a consummate hustler.
You are not wrong.
Man. Yes.
You are not wrong. Yeah.
Even I saw your presentation at Writer Fest. Shout out to Amy and Sarah. And it was just like, this motherfucker. Like, this is just genius.
That feeling right there is that part, that magic. You just said it. The times that I've said those words
this motherfucker.
When I heard "Fix You" by Coldplay the first time, I was like, these fuckers.
Yeah.
What is happening? Why did I not write this simple song?
Yeah.
You know.
I felt that way last night. Actually, Rand and I were sitting on the couch with the newborn baby Zuzu, shout out, and watching the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, which I would never watch, but it was just like a who's who of kind of yesteryear greats. And dude, Dionne Warwick, it just tore me apart. she's an American Idol. And
Kelly Clarkson.
Yes, thank you. She sang, and it was the singer of Foreigner, who's long since retired and like a very much an old man.
Sure.
And she's singing his song, and they're both on stage together, and she's looking at him in the eye. God, it makes me emotional just thinking about it. She's like, I've got you. I'm carrying you. And she fucking carried this guy in front of this huge room. And then you saw him like get more comfortable. And then he started singing. And it wasn't like, he's a little probably post absolute stellar prime, but the heart. And just like seeing a person like come alive, maybe one last time, in this amazing audience. God, it was just so beautiful.
No,
anyway,
that's what, again, this whole podcast started with me saying this could be problematic. We are now talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we could talk about this for 20
we could live
minutes.
there for a while.
Right, because we're going to live here at least for another second.
Okay.
I have it recorded, but I recorded it. I record it every year, but I don't always watch it every year because there's always somebody getting in that I want to watch and see. This year, I had to see Dave Matthews Band get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I watched, there's a longer version. We were seeing the edited version on ABC. They released it on HBO,
you could
right?
tell, yeah.
So, but they performed at the very end of the show. And I was watching all these people stand up. I saw Queen Latifah, who probably doesn't know a word of Dave Matthews Band, was in the audience just kind of like going along to it. I was having a moment of thinking, Dave Matthews Band has always been more percentage-wise a black band than a white band. Like Dave is white, you know what I mean? But you had Carter, you had Boyd. He brought like a black band into the world and kind of took over. And now, of course, he has Coffin in it and all of that, and they're great. But I just remember watching them on stage last night thinking, this guy has been singing these songs and telling these stories for 30 years. And music has a way of affecting us that we don't forget about you if it's true and genuine and attaches to us. Instead, we put you into a hall of fame saying you created something that affected us so deeply that we want to make sure that it is forever talked about. And I remember watching that last night thinking, when we start creating, that's not our first thought. You know what I mean?
I've had people on the podcast for whom I think it is. And I've been surprised by that because it's not my first thought at all. It's there's no thought of that.
Zero thought. I mean, not that far into the world. No. I mean, sure, there's a hope it'll be successful, but for me, my hoping that it's successful is just I want you to like it, but not just like it, but I want what I create to mean something to you. And I realize as I've gotten older, I take that so personally that there are certain, listen, I'm going to tell you now, I'm just keeping it 100. There are certain artists that if someone comes to me and tells me that they don't like, I reevaluate our friendship. Like, because I think to myself, you don't like that artist? Well, I want to be that artist. That's all I want to do is have the effect and be that person. And you saying you don't like it insults me in a way that I can't wrap my mind around.
What's one of those artists for you?
Ooh.
Like if somebody doesn't like...
I mean, it's easy. If someone comes to me and says to me that they don't like Counting Crows, and granted...
Of all the people you would say, the last guy...
Let me be very clear. If you come to me and tell me you don't
awesome.
like Adam Duritz, I have questions.
Yeah.
Right? And,
I mean, August and Everything After was a seminal recording of the ages. Let's just leave that there.
Period.
Yeah.
Just who starts an album out with walk out the front door like a ghost into a fog where no one notices the contrast of white on white. I don't understand that lyric, but if you don't like it, I have a problem with you.
Yeah.
I could go on for that forever. That's why I talk about that and I Take My Coffee Black. In fact, my editor had me cut out like a whole chapter of how I felt about that. But I'm using that as an example of, I understand that's niche. I understand that's from a time period. Yeah. I understand whatever. But if you come to me and say you don't like that, I'm like, oh gosh, I have to. I'm wondering. I'm now questioning all of your taste.
I get you. Let's talk about this is a genuine question, and I don't even know if there was like a before and after, but I think that there was. And forgive me too if you just like told the story 1,000 times. You're like, I don't want to tell the story. But when you posted the video,
before you call the cops,
yeah, is that a watershed moment in your life? Was there a before and after?
There was definitely before and after. But I tell this as a joke, but it's the truth. That video has now been seen over 100 million views by all over the place, right? And this is the truth. My mother said to me, "Why didn't you choose to wear a shirt in that video?"
I remember that.
Yeah. And I said, and I mean it. I told my mom, I was like, "Mom, if I knew 100 million people were going to see it, I would have put a shirt on. Like, if I in any way thought that Lionel Richie would repost this video, I would have put a t-shirt on, because I was not trying to show the world my bare skin. I was just trying to have this artistic moment of, so there was definitely before and after. But when I created that video, like all things at the time, I was just trying to create content that I would want to see, that spoke something. And at that point, I had already put out a few things that were based kind of in humor and still had a point to them. I had put out a video prior to that called, it was something like 9 things you need to know if you're a black person going to a Predators hockey game, or something like a playoff game.
Yeah.
That had gotten a huge response to it. But even in the midst of that video, I was trying to make a point about blackness in places where blackness usually isn't at. And so what I did before you call the cops, I just wanted to make a statement on how I felt in the world when I was watching all these people say things to me like, yeah, that guy got shot by the cops because he should have just surrendered, or all cops are good, black men are scary, or all of these things that I was hearing. And I just put myself on tape, man. And I just didn't think that it was going, no, let me be clear. I thought people were going to watch it. I just didn't think people were going to watch it at the rate that it happened. This was back when going viral, I think if you got 2 million views, you were considered, the whole world had seen your things. I had posted that video on a Friday, and by Monday, the Huffington Post called me, and then by the end of that week, it had some 6 million views or something. And this was the first time it went viral, not during George Floyd. And so it's definitely a moment that changed things. Here's to be honest, I wouldn't be sitting here specifically if I had never created that video.
You might be sitting here because we'd still be friends.
But you
would be on book 2 maybe.
Right. That's what I'm saying. What I'm really getting at though is, I don't know if this exact moment would have been happening, but like you said, I'm a hustler. Like, I was going to continue to create no matter what happened. And I continued to do that, but on different levels. I am glad that happened to me because it adjusted the way that I started throwing creativity to the world. Back when I was doing videos back in 2018, I felt that pressure that I had to keep continuing to create things and throw them out into the world.
What was the main thrust of that content during 2018? Was it like humor videos? Was it music? Was it?
It was a mixture of a couple of things. A mixture of me being frustrated that I wasn't getting cast in shows I was reading for. And so, for whatever reasons, there's a million reasons why people don't get cast in shows. And I know I was kind of giving you shit, but I understand. I wasn't getting cast in the shows that I was reading for, some of which I was like, I would be great for that. But at the time I wasn't a name in any sense. I was just another black guy reading for whatever. And it first came out of a thing of being like, I need to create my own content. I need to create a community where I can trust people to watch the things that I put in the world. And I don't have all the means. I'm not the best cinematographer. I don't know all that, but I know how to tell a good story. So I'm going to start doing that. I started doing stand-up. And I was doing stand-up specifically so I could test comedy in the room and see how it was going to affect people in the room and see if I could pull that over into the internet and hopefully build a bigger audience. So any joke that I would tell online, I had already told in a room to see how it would feel. And that's when I became friends with people like Dusty Slay and Nate Bargatze. And at that time period, we were all just kind of in rooms in Nashville and kind of traveling around to tell stories, right? So I wanted to have humor. I always knew that that's what I wanted to have in videos and the things that I did and said, because that connects people. But I didn't just want to be funny. I wanted to be funny with a point. And my point, in my view, came from the fact I'm a black man now who lives in the South. And the things that I experience are different than other people. So how can I take my story, the things that I'm experiencing at an everyday level, continue to put the lightness of humor, but also the like weight and brevity of honesty. And that's how Tyler Merritt Project was born. Like it was my attempt to do that.
Well, that's really clear in I Take My Coffee Black and in that presentation I mentioned before when you were at Writer Fest, because while there are these moments of hilarity, people are like in stitches, you'll all of a sudden like pull the rug out from under the room. And it seems like Before You Call the Cops was sort of like the clarion call of that vibe where you just were so serious and it was so genuine and sincere and it wasn't comedy. And it was that it wasn't comedy that made it punch people in the face. You told a kind of a great story at that presentation about like the before moment, because you were kind of like, and maybe you were just doing this for dramatic effect. I don't know. Far be it from you. I know. But you were like on the couch, you've just been depressed. Like you're like, weren't wearing a shirt. And you just like had these feelings, and like a lot of people, and I bring this up because there's people listening to this podcast that are, trying to stay inspired and in spite of the zillion challenges. You're sitting there in this moment of not being thrilled about this condition of life, writ large or small. And you have these feelings in that moment. You could have gone, I'll just get a beer, or I will, or you could grab your phone and just take a chance. I mean, what a chance. That's great looking back on that.
Looking back on it. 100%.
And so that's to the point of that moralizing tale, is that, take the chance, go with the feeling, right?
If we were going to talk about moments that probably really were kind of the catalyst to turning everything around, even me moving to Nashville, I started my band Broken Frame back in 1995, literally. And when I decided I was going to come to Nashville with them from Northern California, Santa Cruz area, my mom was like, just go and do it. And I think there were people that were trying to keep me there in California at the time. If I would have never came to Nashville, again, something else would have came to be. But there was something about taking the step of going, I need to go where I can build things in a way that are going to be effective for the environment that I'm in. And there was something about being in this city. When we first moved here, we used to go downtown and kick it on Bourbon Street, and back before every country artist owned a bar,
Broadway, right?
Yeah, on Broadway and on Bourbon Street. And we would, not Bourbon Street, Printer's Alley. Printer's Alley, forgive me. I always get those two places mixed up. Printer's Alley and on Broadway. We would go and kick it. And, God, man, we would go to school. We'd watch all these musicians on stage.
Oh, yeah.
We moved here and thought we were okay. We were good. Like, we don't suck. But we didn't play music for 6 months when we first moved here. All we did was sit and watch people and go, okay, you are great at what you do. You are great. And now we're in an environment where we need to be great. We can't just be medium anymore. We can't just be mediocre. We need to be great. And I think moving into an environment where we were sitting amongst just the dopest musicians in the world and people that had worked so hard. And, this was back in 2003, bro. This was back, Lee Bryce. I don't know if you're familiar with Lee Bryce. Okay.
Yeah. I acted in one of his music videos.
Did you? Okay.
I was the lead.
Recently?
Okay. 2 years ago. A year ago.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah. Soul, that song,
the
Soul.
The very first CD that we produced as a band, Lee Bryce was like our producer on it. And I'm talking in his basement with him and his friend Nick Norman. This was back when all of these artists were still, they were great, but nobody had broke out of these things. And I think a big decision that I made was surrounding myself around people that were better than me. People that I can look at, and that magic that I always wanted to pursue, they were doing it. And so it made me go to bed every night going, I need not sleep long, because while I'm sleeping, someone else is out there making their dreams come true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I need to get this together.
I mean, this town more than any other is a cauldron of a forge where you either get with the program or you move back home, and lots of cats. Like you'll see somebody who's been here for a couple of months, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they can't wait to take over the road. I'm just gonna be like, yeah, cool. Talk to me.
Yeah.
What? Here's a story about that. Like I grew up in Idaho. I went to college in Seattle area and I spent my 20s in a town just north of Seattle called Bellingham. And
What years?
This would have been, I graduated college 94. In 2002. Yeah, I graduated high school in 94. And then so it would be the 90s, and I moved to Nashville. I moved to Seattle from that little town in 2005, and then was there for 2 years, and then moved here from there in 2008.
I was trying to get the feel of what music was like in that time.
Yeah, well, it's like when I was a senior, it was Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden.
Sure.
And then really quickly, by 99, it was already starting to be Death Cab and Modest Mouse, and the scene had really changed.
Yeah, for sure.
And in the meantime, I was got all hooked on Doc Watson and finger picking and bluegrass, and that I had this bluegrass band, Spin Magazine, called us the Young Riders of the Bluegrass Revolt.
Wow.
Barbed Wire Cutters.
Oh, and Spin Magazine.
Totally. It mattered, man. It mattered. I actually got some gigs. Tell you what. I started making solo records. This is all to say that I had this career up there, and I was kind of a bigger fish in a very small pond in my way. And when I moved to Nashville, it was, right before I moved to Nashville, I had started having meetings. I'd come and have meetings with publishers and whatever. And I remember I had some stuff going on back there, and I would sit in these publishers meetings and I'd play my tracks, and they're like, yeah, this is really great. Really great. I'm like, thanks. They're like, well, just move here and, send me an email when you move. And I was just like, what the fuck? I'm great now. I don't want to move here. You want to do something or not? And now, having lived here in this town, I understand that perspective so much more, because Nashville has a way of it. I really do feel like in this town, the cream rises to the top, because it's such a slow town. Yeah. It's such a slow burn. Yeah. It takes forever. Yeah. It's not I feel like LA is a little bit more gimmicky. You can have a look and a thing and you can be hot, and then that works. In Nashville, you can be hot and it kind of works, but it doesn't really work. The stuff that really counts and rises above is it's selected by the community. It's like everybody's
yeah. I think there's levels though. Meaning,
for sure.
Oh God, I love Nashville, but this town can also be so.
No, let's talk some shit. I love it.
Yeah, I'm saying Nashville could be so kind of shitty sometimes. You might be one of these people, so we might we might go at it right now.
Right. Well, I'm glad there's a table between us.
If you live in Nashville, Tennessee, and you talk shit about Taylor Swift, I feel like it's hard for me to listen to you after that. Mm-hmm.
Because it sounds like sour grapes.
It just sounds like, if you live in this town, you have to be able to appreciate success, however the fuck you get there. Mm-hmm. You have to be, if you found success out of this town, whatever the math was that put you into the place that you are, you have to be able to appreciate, in my opinion, you have to appreciate the hustle. You have to appreciate the hard work. You have to appreciate pop music in this town. Like, people that are like, oh my gosh, I don't listen to that because I get it. Everybody has their own taste. That's one thing. But if 30 million people buy your album and you went to high school 20 minutes away from where I live, I ain't got nothing but respect for you, man. Yeah. Especially in this town. Because somehow you figured it out. Somehow you put in something to get to where you are. It's the same way when I hear people, I'm telling you, man, I know I sound like I just love everybody, but it has to do with the hustle. It has to do with appreciation. If I hear somebody talk shit about Jelly Roll, I don't even listen to Jelly Roll. I was just
thinking about Jelly Roll. I was just thinking about him. He was all over the Hall of Fame show.
Yeah. I don't even think about, like, I couldn't tell you one single Jelly Roll song. And I don't mean that as an insult. But what I'm saying is, I ain't got nothing but respect for that dude who came out of Antioch, who I absolutely guarantee shopped at the Hickory Hollow Mall with me at some point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you ain't got nothing. I ain't got nothing but respect for you, bro, that in this town, you found a way to be successful, because that road is crazy, you know? And even slight success in this town, and success is relative, right? But I remember back in the day when bands were an actual thing, when we would play shows, we would have a whole packed room full of people, and they were the artist, you know? In this town, you could be an artist's favorite band and no one had ever heard of you before. But in Nashville, that meant something. That means something. And that's no insult to Santa Cruz, where I came from, or where you came from in Idaho, you know? But there's something else here, man.
Well, because everybody in that room is going for it too. And they're going to give you, I think, like, they're going to give you a fair shake. They're going to, with their arms crossed. You know, it's a judgy fair shake, but it's feel all right. And then if you get, you know, if you can move me in a room, I've seen it all, motherfucker. You know, it's like, if I'll see stuff, you know, some girl crooning on the latest country bop downtown. She might have a fabulous voice, whatever. It's just like, cool kid.
Yeah.
Good job. But when you're sitting here, you see something and it cuts through whatever, you know, I'm like, okay, who is that guy or that lady or that band?
But like, think about, I think, Corey, like, for people that have found success in this town, on some level, I mean, even unless they were like wildly manufactured, but even then there's a story there, you know? That moment that you're talking about had to happen with somebody, for somebody to go, okay, let's continue to grow you and make you, you know. But I'm right there with you on that, man. Like, I tell people this all the time, especially even to this day as musicians, when they're like, I want to make it in this town, I want to whatever. One of the number one things I say is, don't rush into having a first performance here. Like, get good, get to where you need to be. And I'm not talking about hometown good. I'm talking about Nashville good. Because you only have once, maybe twice, to perform out and have people watch you and draw a conclusion.
Yep.
Because the amount of times I've had people say, come see my band, come see my band, come see my band. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, are you sure you want this? Because I will come and see your band at least once. Well, let's be very clear.
You know not what you say.
That's on you, bro.
Yeah.
But also, if you're dope, that is, I will tell everybody, you know, and that's how this town works, man. But I think that's also why we have greatness here, man, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we have I feel like every contemporary star still has to compare themselves to the greats of the past. We're all like standing on the shoulders of our forefathers. You know what I mean?
Right.
That whole thing, but it's beautiful. Like the standards have been so high for so long. So I love that. But I want to also talk to you about you coming up out west.
Yeah.
And because I came up out west and I live in Nashville, and I feel like out west is a different flavor, and you get at that in talk specifically about Vegas.
Yeah.
But I feel like out west, this is my conception of out west, good and bad. It's pastless. Nobody gives a shit about where you're from or what happened 5 years ago or 1 year
Sure.
or last week. It's just like, what are you doing right now? And can we do something together? Can we, what's next?
Yeah.
And with that comes like sort of there's a shallowness with that,
Sure.
and a rootlessness in that approach, but it is very free. And when you come back here, it's very past-ish. Everything is, like I just said, you're looking back. Country music is a looking past kind of music.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
And so I loved how you got at that in I Take My Coffee Black, where, you describe sort of coming up where you did. And then when you went to Utah, Alabama, for the first time, you're like, oh, this is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can articulate like some of, if any, of that duality of perspective. Do you still feel like you kind of have a West Coast perspective of, present and future, or do you feel like living in the South where the some of the issues just don't seem to have any sign of going anywhere?
So
throw some words at that.
I think what people have to remember about the South, and I'll try to make this part quick because we could talk about this for a long time, is the South. The history of the South is really a true thing. It's not a made up thing. It's not something that the woke people try to use to have some sort of power here, but they're slaves. I remember watching the movie Lincoln, the Daniel Day movie, Daniel Day-Lewis movie.
I fell asleep at the theater, I remember.
I remember watching it in the movie theater, and there's this part where he starts talking about slavery in Tennessee, and I'm like, was here. Like I had this moment of going like, this isn't like some far off place he's talking about. He's talking about how they were trying to fight to keep the place in which I am sitting right now from having slaves anymore. And I am on this, I'm in this part of the world. That's a true thing that happened. I grew up in Las Vegas where, around
it's a thing that happened somewhere
people.
else.
Yeah,
right?
It's that thing that happened somewhere else.
Yeah.
And the proof of that is that my best friend is a white kid and an Asian kid and a Hawaiian kid, and we are all in this whole thing together. And if I'm a poor black kid in Vegas, my friend's a poor white kid in Vegas. Like we're just all, the same way with affluent, and growing up on the West Coast in that mentality, you don't initially associate all the crappy stuff with race. You just don't initially do it, especially if you're a kid, right? But I came here as a kid to the South, to Utah, Alabama, and it took me 2 seconds to look around and go, why are all these black people all together on this side of town and all the white people are on that side of town? And it wasn't just because we went, let's just separate ourselves. It was because not too long ago, those white people hung the black people from trees over here. So now the black people live over here in an area where they feel safe and together. And though that's no longer what's happening every day, there's still a history of that. So that history of keeping safe continue to exist. Here in Nashville, bro, things you may or may not think about. I'm a theater nerd, like a movie theater snob. So I like to go to movie theaters that I like. I go to Green Hills Movie Theater. Next time you're in Green Hills Movie Theater, unless there is a specifically black movie playing, and what I mean by black, you know what I mean by black movie. I'm saying if Tyler Perry releases a movie or it's something that stars, whatever. You're going to go to these movies, you're going to go to Green Hills and take a look around and notice that the black people that are at that movie theater are all working there. Next time you go to the Ryman, notice the only black people you're going to see are the people that are working there. Why is it in 2025 can I still go to a place that's populated like this, go over into a neighborhood and go, this is where the white people exist, and still have black people who are serving them because it assists them.
Dude, I got two things to say about that.
Yeah.
One is, we just kind of had fun for a second, just bashing on Nashville. And I want to say that actually on balance, I love this town. It's been good to me. I think it's wonderful. However, that rings true. I remember the first time, not maybe the first time, but a time I went to Charlotte. I used to tour a lot and play these clubs, and there's a great club in Charlotte to play at. And it was sort of in the East Nashville part of Charlotte, and I went into a club, not a club. I'm just like a place that you would like the Three Crow equivalent kind of place in Charlotte, and there was half the people there were black and half were white, and that was the first time I was like, huh. You don't ever see that in Nashville. Still. Like if we go round the corner to the Reunion Bar, you will be the only black dude in there.
100%.
Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to say. And then the other thing I wanted to say.
Well, let me ask you this question really quick before we move on. So you felt that in Charlotte. You felt that.
I noticed it, and then I felt it. You know what I mean? I was like, oh. This could be different. Has the thought
that I just shared about the Green Hills Movie Theater ever crossed your mind?
I think that no, because when you did your presentation at Writer Fest, who was in that room? Yeah. What color were they?
Yeah.
Without exception, just about. Mm-hmm. All the arts in Nashville are really segregated. And there's like Keith at Lightning 100 was always kind of the exception in the indie rock scene. I don't know if I'm talking about the DJ there.
Yeah.
And Reverend. But for the most part, you really had to go seek it out, black culture. Mm-hmm. You're talking to a guy who went to Mount Zion for 3 years every Sunday by himself. And so the tables were turned.
100%.
What an amazing church.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Can I get an amen?
Right.
The spirit was loud and clear. I still love that church. I take people that people would visit me in town. I'm like, not church people. We got to go to Mount Zion. You got to check this. This is real stuff, man. I know you think you've heard preaching before, but you would probably be up at the altar 50-50.
Man, I love that.
I'd never go on altar calls. I went on altar calls once a month. I'd be down there getting a blessing, man. I love that. So anyway, so there's that part of it too. And, we live here on this street in East Nashville it's pretty diverse for East Nashville. It's this particular block. And I remember when George Floyd was murdered, we all had these devastating feelings. I think that, everybody did, right?
Sure.
And I was like, what can I do? What can I do that feels honest or feels like something that would be I don't know. What's an honest response as best I can understand it to help. And this is what I ended up doing is very maybe silly in some perspective or ineffectual in another, was I thought everybody likes homemade ice cream and I would like to have an ice cream social in my front yard. I've never taken the time to get to know my neighbors I live 100 feet away from these people.
Right.
And I made a little flyer. My friend designed it and I knocked on doors. This is when the pandemic was kind of loosening just a little bit.
Yeah.
People weren't quite as scared. And people would open the door and they'd maybe recognize me, maybe not. And they'd be like, yeah. I'm like, hey, I wondered if, we're having an ice cream social on Friday and just wanted to, invite you. And people would just be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And dude, seriously, the whole neighborhood came over.
God,
it was the first time my neighbors met each other.
Right.
And I thought, it really was a life-changing thing for me because I was like, this is a clue. This is a clue. This isn't about posting a thing on your Instagram that makes people go they like it and they're like, I'm on the right side, or they don't like it and they unfollow you or whatever. This is hey, we're all fucking people. What's up, man? What's up, Freddie? How do you like your ice cream?
Yeah.
And
that also cost you something.
What did it cost me? I don't know.
Well,
it cost me a little bit of time and a little willingness to be embarrassed in a way or be rejected.
Sure. But there are people who are listening to this thinking there is no way in the world I would walk up to a random stranger's door and say, hey, come over to my yard for ice cream. Mm-hmm. Sure, maybe that's a part of your personality, but you did not have to do that. And you can look back now and go, this was a fantastic thing to do. I talk about, and I take my coffee black, I did this thing called the Safe Place, where I invited people from all over Nashville, all different people, all to one place, and had a very organized conversation about things that were going on in the world that I had put on, that was very organized, had very specific rules, and it ended up being wildly, wildly successful. But I do know that in that moment, when I looked at a gay black woman over here and a white man that works at Lifeway over here, and all of these different people in the room, I thought, this isn't something that just happens all the time in Nashville.
Yeah.
Though, going back to the West Coast, it's not that far off from the West, especially in Las Vegas. Like, we'll have so many different people that will be in a room. But I'll tell you this, man. I remembered when I did the Safe Place, and I talked about this, and I Take My Coffee Black, where there was a white woman in the room who said these words. She said, yeah, my family used to own slaves, and I still have the receipts in a drawer. And there was a black woman in the room that said, the fuck? Like, stopped her, and they was just like, what? Why do you keep the receipts? Like, we were having this whole moment, and then another black woman in that room in that same situation scenario, she said, my parents raised me to be afraid of white people, like to not talk to white people. So she was like, to this day, I still try my best to just avoid them all. And I'm listening to these conversations, and I'm going, I'm not saying that this is exclusive to the South, but this is South conversation. Like, I would have never had this conversation in Las Vegas or LA or Santa Cruz. Like, we're having our own issues, but this is some very specific Southern history.
Yes.
That we can't just ignore, act like it doesn't exist, because it is an actual real thing. So I asked you about the Green Hills thing because these are things that I think about all the time. In my new book, And This Changes Everything, I bring up the restaurant Mojo's in Franklin, my favorite taco place in town. And I was thinking about...
Is that in the Franklin, that little like mall-y thing?
Yeah. It's in like the Building 8 area.
Fantastic tacos. Okay.
I love that place. I'm a vegetarian. They have these cauliflower tacos. Jesus made them himself. And I realized in the book, with me using the example of that place, that if you're black and you're reading that book, I just invited you into just a white experience. Like, I'm always the black guy who's in there. That's the South.
Yeah. I just remembered the other thing that I was going to say, which is small but telling, which is that I've been to parties now and then, kind of highbrow literati parties in Belmead. Without exception, though, there's somebody tending bar in a white coat, and he's an old black man, and maybe a too old black man. And the first time I ever went to one of those parties, it made me uncomfortable. Bro. Because it felt like a throwback to a former time. And it felt like the idea was the good old days.
Bro.
And I was like, my girlfriend at the time, we looked at each other and we were just like, man, let's get the fuck out of here.
The fact that you even paid attention to that, though, as I'm saying... That's
a West Coast thing. I mean, to me, that's my West mentality, where we're all a little bit more... there's a little bit more of an egalitarian spirit out there.
Also, it's not... People that grew up here, in their defense... They grew up here. It's not new to them. They're used to that stuff. If you're a kid and you're around it all the time, you're a kid and you're around it. But I appreciate the fact that you noticed that, but I'm going to invite you on this day in 2025 to continue to look at those small, same things in places that you go to regularly now. And when you go in, just look around and ask yourself, how many black people are in this place? And the ones that are here, what are they doing? And probably the best example of that is the Ryman. Because I spent a lot of time with the Ryman, going and seeing a lot of different things. And it can be anything from almost a very specifically all-white band or like music that has mostly a white folks following, to Trevor Noah. You know what I mean? Like... it's a church, and you're in there going, this isn't a place that typically black folks come to. Why is that?
I'm trying to think of the last time where I like looked around and I was like, dang, there's a quite a cross section of people here. And to me, it's been not at Zion. There's been another church here in town. I can't remember. They all kind of run together.
Yeah.
But point taken.
But the churches that do that here, that's their thing.
That's their thing. I know they are self-consciously
They are about it. But I'll tell you, the last time that I was in a place,
which I just want to say that to me, like, that's the way to go. Like, that is the church. That is the message, right? I mean, this is where we have in common, I think, a little bit too. I have a evangelical background, more like my folks, hardcore in it, but like not a fake thing. Yeah. And I have a lot of like genuine adoration of both of my parents for their perspective and their practice of what they believe so it surprises me. It doesn't surprise me because it's hard to be uncomfortable. People want to be uncomfortable. It's hard enough to go to church. So we just want to do it with people that look like us. And but we could do a little better, and we could be like, it is about reaching out to somebody who doesn't look like you. It costs you something. You have to take a chance. You have to think of what to say. You might say the wrong thing. It might be uncomfortable. All of these other things, but your life, you're going to walk away. I promise. 10 times out of 10 richer. Well,
that's why I was saying to you, you were casually like, I did this ice cream social, and I'm like, bro, not every white dude in America is doing that right now. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yet.
Like, right. But that costs you something, and you're better for it, and so are your neighbors. Same way how you're talking about that now. I guarantee Susie down the street is like, this white boy had an ice cream social one Friday night, and it was the best thing.
Well, hopefully, yeah. I mean, a through line of this whole podcast experiment is that it's connected to that. It's like, I am of not, of limited talent and means, and I'm just some white guy from Idaho. But to the extent that I can create a situation where people feel comfortable in themselves and comfortable to try to take chances on meeting other people or doing things that they wouldn't otherwise do, that's what I want to be part of. Directionally, that's where I'm headed. However effective I am remains to be seen. You've been really generous with your time. Last subject.
I got a little. Let's go.
I got baby duty in a second. That's more the thing. I got to hold an infant here. I love your mom.
Yeah.
I take my coffee black, and I wish she were here so I could ask her, just talk to her, because the story that you tell is really touching and heroic in some ways, the picture that you paint of your mother. And I wonder if you could share a little of that story about, like, has she retired yet?
No, she's still working.
High achiever.
Yeah.
High achiever.
For sure.
Just maybe you could break down a little bit of her life story.
Sure. I'll give a kind of a quick version of it. She's in my new book, This Changes Everything, as well. And she's on the audiobook, so it's pretty sweet.
Oh, cool. Her voice and everything.
Yeah, her voice is in this one too. So first I'll say this. I'm 48 years old. I wrote I Take My Coffee Black when I was 45-ish. And it took me writing a whole book from top to bottom to realize how impactful my mother was in my life. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous because moms, but I found that every single experience that I had, or there was some major decision that was made in my life, it was usually my mom pushing me or like directing me into that thing that was going to take me deeper into the place that I wanted to be. Early on, when I went to a high school that was gang affiliated, and I loved it kind of because it gave me some value as a black dude in Vegas of like, I go to the hardcore school, and then the Las Vegas Academy Performing Arts School opened up. My mom said, yeah, you're going to go to that performing arts school because this is who you've always been. And I remember being like, no, I don't want to leave my friends. And she was like, no, you're going. That was just a small example. But even before that, her pushing me to go to a church camp and tricking me because there were girls there, My mom always had this way to kind of help kind of direct and push and pull me. And a part of that was, her and my father grew up in this tiny town, Utah, Alabama, where they were just poor black folks. My father was a son of a sharecropper, and gosh, they came out of this little tiny black town, but their hustle and their drive and their desire to grow and be was just so major. Now, granted, it wasn't the same fields of things I wanted to be in. My father was in the military and he succeeded to the highest extent. And my mother was a banker, and she went from being just a teller to this day being, I joke about her being the Oprah Winfrey of Las Vegas, but she is on every board, Chamber of Commerce. Everybody wants her to be in every single thing. And one of the reasons that she was able to succeed that way is her name is Jerry Merritt. And when she first started coming up in banking, she knew that people weren't going to want to deal with her as a Black woman and as a woman. And so clients would call on the phone and say, I want to talk to one of the main bankers there. And she would have her secretary say, don't use any pronouns here. Just let them think I am who I am. And they would say, yeah, well, you'll meet with Jerry when you come in. And so they would come in. But if they got in the door, my mom...
She'd close the deal. Yeah!
You know?
Yeah.
And
and just to circle back to one of our earlier themes, you know, she wasn't always a banker, right? She moved with your pop on the military bases, and it wasn't until she was in Alaska and she saw a help wanted sign and she took a chance, you know? And I love like that. To me, I can see it in you, and that willingness to just be told no, to just do something uncomfortable in the name of having a better result.
Yeah.
And God, that is just so universal. And I mean, to have your mom start in that little town and come this far. I mean, it's a beautiful story. It's an American story in a way. I know that like America has a lot of major problems, but there's a small example. And I love that, you know, you're the product of that woman and all of her fearsome power. I would like be sitting up even straighter than I already am, probably if she were in this room. I really would.
Well, she has that effect. It's she has that effect. I'm going to try to get her to write a book. And I don't even know if that's the best means for her to tell her story, you know? Which, let me say this before we cut this off. One of the things that I appreciate about you is you use film and you use music to tell your stories. You've never written a book before.
I have. It's published. I'll give it to you on your way out. Yeah, it was critically acclaimed. Yeah, a collection of short stories called Medium Hero.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm working on a novel right now, and that's
Fantastic.
my main thing. I'm a super book nerd. I'm like,
yeah. Well, this is
I'm trying.
This is kind of my point in that the thing that I learned as I was writing I Take My Coffee Black is I've always been a storyteller. That was the thread with everything that I've always wanted to do. If someone were to say, you know, tell me the things that you want to be like, you know, it wasn't I wanted to be, no, let me go back. Sure, maybe I wanted to be a rock star. Maybe I wanted to be an actor. Maybe I wanted to be a comedian. Maybe all of those things, you know, that I thought I wanted to be, they weren't what I actually wanted to be. They were what would come out of what I really wanted to be, which was a person who told stories and told them effectively in hopes to help change lives. And that's what I ended up doing here in Nashville. Gosh, my singing voice is crap and has been for years because I just don't use it. But if I had the opportunity tomorrow to join a band of something I really enjoyed singing and telling stories with, I would do that because the avenue of being able to tell stories in that venue. I love working on TV and movies and films because that really nowadays, it's one of the most wide ways to tell stories with every streaming service, this, that, the other. It's brilliant. When I read I Take My Coffee Black, I didn't realize it was going to be as successful as it was. I'm wildly thankful that it was. But when people read I Take My Coffee Black, it doesn't feel heavy. It feels like you're sitting down with a person across from you, just telling stories. Being like, let me tell you about how I walk across the street over by my house in Nashville. Now let me tell you about my mom. And while we're on it, let's go through some history of why this sucks, you know? And I realized it's just what I've always done, man, and what I've always been drawn to, whether it was special ed with his lyrics. I'm the Magnificent. I'm like, yes, you are. Or Adam Duritz saying, walk out the front door. I'm going, you got me in your story, bro. Take me. And every time that I've ever said, fuck those guys, man, it was because I was admiring their ability to captivate folks with story. And that's what I hope to do now.
Well, I'd say you're doing a pretty good job of it so far, man. And I wish you another level of success with This Changes Everything. And
Thanks,
it's out
January 14th.
January 14th. So this will air probably right that same day or the day after. So we're trying to load this thing up, man. I love you. You're a beautiful spirit, Tyler Merritt.
You too,
I wish
my
you
friend.
every success. Talk soon.
Yes, sir.
Peace. Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and click here to like and subscribe. You can click right there to watch another video, or click here to watch a playlist featuring songs of the Morse Code podcast. Okay, thank you very much.